I want to thank the Sanborns first for hosting this and calling me and inviting me here. Thank you all for coming out and supporting our retiring Bedford reps. I got to tell you, I started in politics as a state representative. It was one of the greatest honors that I had when I won for the first time from Ward 3 in Manchester. The funny thing is, when I ran, I literally had no idea what the pay was. And when I found out it was $100, I just assumed that there was something. And then I got up there, I got sworn in, and they give you a check for the entire 2 years, and they take taxes out. So I think it's $186. I still have that check, I never cashed it. So someday maybe I will cash it with interest. But it was a great honor for me to serve as a state legislator. You know, we all joke about New Hampshire that we have one of the largest legislative bodies in the world, but it works. And it works because citizens take responsibility for their communities and get involved and get engaged. That, in New Hampshire's essence, is what it means to represent people. And I learned that as a state representative, when Gene Chandler, then Gene Chandler, was Speaker of the House. And I also learned that your word is your bond. It's the first thing that every new state legislator hears from, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat up in Concord. Your word is your bond. You can make mistakes. People will accept mistakes. But when you say something, you've got to mean it. And I think that's what's lacking right now in our country in terms of how the federal government is operating. We have a lack of leadership. We have a lack of dignity. We have a lack of understanding and command of the issues. And it's hurting everyone. I talk to families all across our district and our state about the concerns that people have for their children, for their grandchildren. And if you think back to when President Obama first took office, you have to ask yourself, are you actually better off today than you were 6 years ago? And is the country better off today than it was 6 years ago? And is there hope for the next 2 years that things are going to get better under the leadership of this president? Now, I respect the office. I can differentiate or disagree in a respectful way with the office holder. And I think in New Hampshire, we have a tradition, particularly Republicans, of trying to be dignified and honorable in how we run our races and how we talk about policy and substance issues, things that matter to families and Americans. Unfortunately, the other side doesn't necessarily play by those same rules. We had our primaries, it seems like a year ago, but it was only 8 days ago, 9 days ago. And within 48 hours, there were negative ads run against Walt by Maggie, run against me by Carol, run against Marilyn Garcia and CD2 by Annie Custer. And they started months ago against Scott Brown. And as I talk with people, I say, boy, I am tired of these negative ads. Let me tell you, negative ads work with a certain segment of the population. And it's very frustrating because good people end up coming up short because of the negativity in politics. So a year ago or so, when I decided whether I was going to run again, this was one of the factors that my wife Maureen and I talked about. And our kids are now 9 and 11. You know, when they were 2 and 3 and 4, they didn't pick up on this stuff. But they do now. Colby is in 6th grade and Jack is in 4th grade. They pick up on it. It's hard not to walk by a television or read a newspaper and see something that might be disparaging. My little son Jack, who's he's a very young now, he gets very defensive. He gets very upset. Colby is thicker skinned. But as a father, when you have to sit down with your children to explain why these things are wrong and inappropriate, it makes you want to run even more for the right reasons. And I look at what's going on nationally, and our country is in trouble. You just have to look at the last 3 months. look at the issues that we are facing domestically and internationally. We need real leadership in this country. We need solutions and ideas to take us out of where we are. And I believe that with this election, we can achieve that objective. I'm an internal optimist. I do think things will get better. I think for those here who have grandkids, your grandkids' world will be better than what you're seeing today. But it doesn't matter who we elect this November and in 2016. Should I be fortunate enough to return and be your representative again, there's probably 4 or 5 things immediately that I think we need to accomplish. Number one, we've got to balance our federal budget. I've never seen a budget so out of balance that seems to be acceptable to so many people. We don't do that in our homes. We don't do that with our businesses. We don't do it in our communities. You know, when I was mayor, not only did we balance budgets, we cut taxes, but we actually returned money to taxpayers after we cut the taxes and after we balanced the budgets, because it was taxpayers' money in the first place. There's got to be a respect of other people's money again at the federal level. $700 billion deficit, and people don't seem to care. We have to then grow our economy, and the way to do that, I think, is to have overall tax reform, not just on the individual side, but on the corporate side. Make us more competitive internationally. Bring those companies back that are going overseas, because they can perform better overseas than here because of tax policy and regulatory policy. We all see it. Third, I think we need to deal with Obamacare. I don't think it's worked. It's been here for 4 years. I think we need to repeal it. We need to replace it. I haven't met too many people that think borrowing $2 trillion to mandate people to purchase insurance, when that insurance then costs more and you have less access, I don't meet many people who think that's a good idea. Fourth, energy independence is becoming more important, not just because of the cost of energy, but because of what's going on internationally. Just think about the position that Russia is in today, what they're doing with Ukraine. I am part Polish. My mom, her mother grew up in Poland. When President Obama took the missile defense shield out of Poland, it upset me on many levels. But it signified to me that we were weak in the region. And today you have Russia not just taking over Crimea, but invading Ukraine. And my concern is that up and down that border, they can consider taking more countries, because Europe is reliant on Russia's energy sources. Now we're in a conflict in Iraq and Syria. Russia supports Syria. Why? Because Russia created the agreement when our president drew a red line, and then Syria walked all over it. Russia has stated if we invade, or if we have troops on the ground, or if we went into Syria, they will support Syria. Russia is becoming the geopolitical power that Mitt Romney claimed they were, right underneath the nose of this president. So us being energy independent isn't just for our economic freedom, it's for the freedom of the world and for the strength of Europe. And the final piece that I think is so critical is our federal government has been growing and growing and growing. And I haven't seen that as a successful package as a way to instill and restore democracy. I think the more limited government is, the more effective we can be. And I think if we can, as not just Republicans, but as Americans, communicate this message, I think we can win, and I think we can do great things while governing. Governing is not easy. It's about making tough choices, but it's also about articulating why you're making those choices. And that's what New Hampshire is about. Coming home every weekend, having town hall meetings, communicating with people, which is what Carol Shea Porter refuses to do. And that's disheartening to me, not because I'm running against her, but because she represents. So we've got 7 weeks and a very, very important decision on November 4th. Now I hope that most people in this room are supporting it. But Walt said something very important. We've got to grow the vote, not just here in Bedford, but all over the state, which means we do need to talk to our friends and neighbors. You know, I'll leave you with this. Democrats are going into Republican communities and trying to expand their vote total. Ready for Hillary is doing it. The Democrats I just saw had their event in Bedford within the last week or so. We cannot afford to make an assumption that all of our friends and neighbors are voting and thinking the same way we do. We have to communicate effectively. And the more that we all do it, the greater the likelihood is that people like Waldman and myself are all the way up and down the ticket, which I think is good for our state, good for our country, and good for the future of America. So I thank you for taking time to listen to me. I know we're not a little bit too long, but this is an important and a very passionate issue for me. It is why I've decided to run again, and it is why I'm willing to go through what the candidates have to go through. I can take it, by the way, don't worry about me. I've been through it, I can take it. My kids, my wife, she gets a little upset. But the bottom line is there are good things that can be done. 6 months ago, I was in Conway, and I ran into a woman and said, "You don't know me, but I have a job because of the job fair that you held when we were students." That, to me, is thanks enough for serving. Helping people, not just by your legislative agenda, but by your actions back home. So thanks for taking a couple of minutes to listen to me. Thank you for coming out and supporting those who are retiring. It's somewhat a thankless job, but it's an important job. And I want to thank the Samuels for hosting, and I look forward to having both of them reelected. They do a great job serving you.